This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Actually, something that the three of us put together a definition about what our beliefs were and our definition of it. And here's what we came up with. A trained, non-medical professional of extraordinary compassion and kindness who brings emotional, practical, and unbiased support and expertise for those nearing death. Also known as an end-of-life doula, these caring professionals are often called upon to provide comfort, calm, and education for the dying person and their loved ones.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. Today's episode features a trio of end-of-life doulas. Co-authors Diane Button, Angela Shook, and Gabby Jimenez are my guests today. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice podcast is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
This episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast is sponsored by the Tree of Life Conference by International Doula Life Movement. Join IDLM at the Tree of Life Conference in San Antonio, Texas, November 1st through the 4th. The Tree of Life Conference is more than just workshops and seminars. It's an opportunity to connect, learn, and renew your commitment to compassionate care. Attendees will hear from expert speakers like end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes and Death Deck co-creator Lisa Paul. Visit internationaldoulalifemovement.com for more details. This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services. When you need information about hospice, Hospice Navigation Services can help. Our team of experienced hospice navigators is here to offer one-on-one consulting sessions by phone or video. You can book a complimentary 30-minute session when you need general information, or book a 60-minute session when you have in-depth questions or need to troubleshoot your current hospice care. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Visit theheartofhospice.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
Got a great trio of end-of-life doulas today. If you don't know what a doula is, you're going to find out in today's episode. My guests today include Gabby Jimenez. You've heard her on the podcast before. She is the founder of the Hospice Heart. She's a hospice nurse, an end-of-life doula, and a conscious dying educator. I also have Diane Button. She is a founding partner of the Bay Area End-of-Life Doula Alliance in Northern California. She is also an end-of-life doula. She is an author and an educator and the director of Dream of Better World, a nonprofit that supports disadvantaged kids and families around the world. Angela Shook is my third guest. She's also an end-of-life doula and past president of the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, otherwise known as NEDA. She's the owner of Dragonfly End-of-Life Services. So, wow, this is a powerful group of women. They're doing some amazing work. You're going to hear them describe the reasons that they wrote the book in the first place and what they included. They have a very specific definition for the work of an end-of-life doula that really encapsulates what a doula does. Each of them goes into detail about how working as a doula has changed their own personal lives, has changed them. And since all of them are also practicing doulas currently, they share what they would offer a personal caregiver who's right now at the bedside of a loved one. So there's a lot of information packed here. I will tell you that to find their book, The Doula Tool Kit, the complete practical guide for end-of-life doulas and caregivers, you can find it on Amazon. You can also find it on Gabby's website, which is thehospiceheart.net. You can find the book on Diane's website, which is dianebutton.com. Or you can purchase it on Angela Shook's website, which is angelashook.com. So check out the show notes after you listen to the episode. There will be links to get the book on all of their sites and connect with these ladies. So here we go. This is chock full of information. Here's my conversation with co-authors Diane, Angela, and Gabby. Hi, you guys. Welcome to the Heart of Hospice podcast.
Hi.
I'm so intimidated. I don't know that I've had 3 guests at the same time. And I'm feeling like it's going to get a little chaotic and out of control.
Hopefully.
I'm kind of counting on that. So we're going to start with an icebreaker question that I did not send any of you. So it's just going to be something that's off the cuff. And what you're going to do is tell on one of your co-authors in a nice way, in a really nice way. So you are going to tell me about a superpower that one of your co-authors has. We're going to start with Diane. And Diane, you tell me a superpower that Gabby has.
Oh God, she has so many superpowers. We could just do a sideshow called Gabby's Superpowers. I mean, she really does. But I said before that she writes faster than she speaks, and I think that's a superpower. But also, like, she is just a magnet for people. Like, she just draws people to her with her like super big, giant, compassionate heart. So I think she's pretty amazing that way.
Yeah, totally true. Okay, Angela, you tell one of Diane's superpowers.
She's a visionary, I'll tell you. Like, when it comes to this project, it was her vision that brought us together. She saw the different ways that we did things and was able to piece together this beautiful relationship and this beautiful project that Gabby and I didn't see coming. You know, she just had this way of putting this group together, and out of it, creating not only hopefully a toolkit and a resource that's helpful for others, but she created an amazing collaboration and friendship amongst the 3 of us.
Oh, that really is a superpower. That may be several superpowers altogether.
She's got them all.
Okay, Gabby, your turn. You tell on Angela. What's one of her superpowers?
I think Angela's superpower is her heart. I don't think I've ever met anyone who has such a consistent, compassionate heart. Everything she does is from her heart. Everything she says, the work that she does, the words in the book, the way she puts intention on everything. I mean, everyone in this field has a heart, but Angela has elevated it to a point where when you hear her, you feel comforted and safe and loved. She has the most beautiful heart of anyone I've ever known.
That's so sweet.
Gabby, thank you.
That's awesome. Well, you guys have managed to harness this energy, the heart that you've got into this great collaborative project to write this book. And it's a weird topic. We're going to be talking about death and dying and doulas and who they are and what they do and what you guys have put together in this book. So what I want to know is how you got into end-of-life work in the first place. Gabby, just using 2 words, how would you tell me how you got into end-of-life care?
Can I do 3 words?
I knew that was coming. It's really hard to do just 2 words. Yes, 3 words is fine.
My friend was dying. That's 4 words. My friend was dying.
Wow.
And it changed everything for me.
Angela, how about you? How did you get into end-of-life work?
My grandfather.
And Diane, how about you?
I was going to say my grandfather too, but I'm going to say something different. I'm going to say meaning making, a hyphenated word, so that's just one, and curiosity.
Ooh, I like that.
It's a good word.
I like that. So 2 out of the 3 of you described a personal experience. I did a post a couple of weeks ago out onto LinkedIn and Instagram to find out how people would describe how they got into this work. And I swear probably 80% of them identified a personal experience, a loss of their own, that was the catalyst for getting into this kind of work, which is amazing if you ask me, because you carry your heart into it when you get into the work part of it, the business side. And I think that's a really big component of the work that we do in end-of-life care.
I think we see that a lot too, that people get into it because of a personal situation. And I think it's one of 2 ways. Either they witnessed a beautiful death and they want to share that and they want others to have it, or they witnessed it where it didn't go well and they didn't have support and they want to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody else.
Right.
And that's really how I see it. A lot of times with our students and the people that come to us, it is a personal experience, but it's one of those 2 extremes that brought them to the actual work.
And I think both perspectives are good, because if you come into it with the knowledge that it can be a wonderful experience and you want other people to have that, or you come into it with the knowledge that it can be a bad experience and you don't want other people to have that. I mean, there's so much about serving the greater good in either perspective. For me, it was a little bit drier. I have to say that I was ready to have a full-time job after being a stay-at-home mom, but I call it a happy accident. The first visit I went to was very intense and beautiful, and I thought, man, this is it. I don't ever want to work in any other area. So no matter how we get here, right, it still has value. So you guys have a new book. I'm going to read the title, The Doula Tool Kit, The Complete Practical Guide for End-of-Life Doulas and Caregivers. So tell me about your collaboration and the reasons you wrote the book. Diane, you were sort of the catalyst, is what they're saying. So why did you think the book was even necessary?
Well, this is really a new field still, an emerging field. And there's classes, but there wasn't anything out there to answer the question, what next? Like, now that I've taken this class, what am I going to do? How am I going to get started? Where are the tools that I need to create my business? And it kind of happened in the back of my mind. I'd been thinking about putting together something with just forms, templates, so that people could maybe have a contract and a vigil form, or maybe a form for maid clients and such. But I ended up on a call introducing Angela and Gabby one day, and the 3 of us were just getting to know each other. And we were talking about all the various calls we get from people. Can I shadow you? Do you have a contract? Do you have an intake form? Can you give me an idea for a ritual? Just constant, all 3 of us getting barraged with emails and calls every week. I even send a form letter out now because I get so many calls, I can't respond to them anymore. So we talked about the fact that kind of led us to realize that there isn't anything out there that answers those questions. Now what? So we came together first to just write a small book, maybe thinking it was going to be 30, 40 pages or something. But it just kept growing and growing and growing with our personal stories and our ideas and just our doula tips and everything like that kind of came together. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger because we had such a good time writing together, and we kept seeing that there was more to be told and more to share. So we just kept putting it out there.
Well, there's a lot to learn about the role of the doula because it's really an unknown in end-of-life care. Sometimes I think that we are unlearning the medicalized way of dying and then getting back to companioning and supporting in a way that's personal and not vulnerable, but relevant. We're not talking about meds and procedures. We're talking about presence and what's happening. And it's just the role of the doula is so tied up in this. And a lot of healthcare people don't even know about it. Angela, tell me, if you were going to describe the role of a doula, how would you tell a layperson, not somebody who works in healthcare, how would you describe the role of a doula to somebody who's just out in the community?
It's actually something that the 3 of us put together a definition about what our beliefs were and our definition of it. And here's what we came up with. A trained non-medical professional of extraordinary compassion and kindness who brings emotional, practical, and unbiased support and expertise for those nearing death. Also known as an end-of-life doula, these caring professionals are often called upon to provide comfort, calm, and education for the dying person and their loved ones.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, and we know there's a lot that goes into it. There's all of those practical tasks and different components, but we believe that's the heart of the work. And I liked what you said just a minute ago about there's so many in the medical field who don't know about us. I have a friend who's a pediatric nurse, and she had brought the book with her to work to read on her break and ended up sharing it. And all these nurses were like, I didn't know this was a thing. How can we know about it? How do we not already know about this? So it's been fun to be part of this movement, to see doulas becoming more mainstream. And that was part of the book. We wanted people to know that we exist and that we're here to help support during that time. So I'm hoping that with this book and the classes and wonderful trainings like Gabby does, that more people are aware of us, more people know that they're not alone at this time, and they do have somebody who's not there to talk about the diagnosis and the medicine, but to talk about the person, and to witness that and acknowledge that life.
Gabby, do you think that there is a growing voice in the end of life and death care community where doulas are becoming stronger and more widely known and used?
I do. I think it's quite popular right now. I call it the flavor of the week because everybody wants to do it. But there's a lot more to it than people are realizing, and I think that's where the misconception lies. That's where things like our book would come in handy, because I honestly think people think I'll go and I'll take this class, I'll get a certificate, I'll become a doula, and then I'm a doula. But it's not. That's not all. It's so much more than that. And people ask me all the time, can a doula work on the hospice team? Can they collaborate together? Hospice teams, from what I've seen so far, most of them are not as comfortable, but I think it's because they are unaware of how we can fill the gap. And there are a lot of gaps. And families don't realize what the benefits are unless someone tells them. It's really well known in our end of life community, but it's not as well known out in the regular community. So I think that it is something that's going to keep getting bigger. Will they ever become a part of the hospice team? I don't think so, at least not anytime soon. But I do think it is something that families would benefit from if there was more education about it.
I totally agree with you about hospice teams utilizing doulas. I think that we're so heavily regulated that it makes hospice leadership and administrators very, very hesitant. And plus, there are different schools because as of right now, there's no standardized education or certification licensing for end-of-life doulas. There's numerous schools. And what you guys are saying that I hear that's very similar to nursing is, so you go through the textbook stuff, right? We go to school, we get all the textbook learning, and then you get out and you learn nursing with your first job. Well, for people who are dying and at the end of life, you can't go out cold like that. Unless you're shadowing, you have a mentor, that's somebody that's working with you side by side for quite a while. It took me a couple of years before I got my feet under me, but I was working in a hospital with a team of people. You have other seasoned healthcare professionals that are right there with you. So I think a brand new doula who doesn't have that hands-on experience, that bedside experience, there's some knowledge gap there.
One of the things that at least in my class that I teach to help people prepare to be a doula, is that it's really important that you have that bedside training, which is not offered in the certification programs. And I think people think I'll get this and then I can do it. And it doesn't work that way, right? Which is, again, why we wrote this book. But one of the things that I've experienced, because I'm also a hospice nurse, as a hospice nurse, when I meet someone that is at the bedside of a patient and I know they're a doula, I just embrace them, right? Because I see their benefits. But when I'm at the bedside of a client as a doula and the hospice team comes in, I'm met with resistance. Oftentimes they talk down to me. I will often say, I'm a hospice nurse simply so I can get the respect that I deserve. But I don't think they see us for what we are capable of. And I want to change that. But in order to change that, we have to educate our newer doulas, actually all doulas. We have to give them more education and training so they can do this job in a way that has earned the respect that it should.
Right. I think credibility is a big issue. Diane, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about doulas and what they do?
Well, I think a lot of people think that we really just sit at the bedside. I've had a lot of people call me thinking that we basically sit vigil, that we're vigilers. That's probably the most common call that I've gotten, where people, they don't realize that we have this offering that might include some legacy work or a life review, or actually putting together a really cohesive vigil plan, not just showing up to sit bedside, or that maybe we work upstream with people to help them with advanced care planning, or that we can, talk through their desires for end of life and such. I think that people see us as very limited. And I think that some doulas actually also kind of start out with just doing one thing. I've heard that, a doula will specialize in one certain thing. And I think that's great, especially if you have a team of doulas, but it sort of sets the tone that we aren't kind of holistic in our offerings. And so that's part of what we were hoping with the book, was that we would kind of be able to expand for all doulas, all the different offerings, so that people can start seeing how well-rounded we can really be.
Don't some doulas offer vigiling and some doulas don't? Some work with grief work even after a person's death, and then some don't. I mean, so the skills that they have and the services they provide sort of vary, don't they, Diane?
Yeah, I think they do vary. And so I'm very fortunate because I work in a team. There's 4 of us in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we also reach out to at least 8 other doulas in our area. And so if I know that somebody is really solid at doing advanced directives and I have a client who wants to do that, I might refer that person. And so I think it's really important for the up and coming doulas to try to get to know other doulas in their area, so that if you aren't comfortable, especially if you're just starting out, you might not be comfortable with doing everything, then you at least have somebody else to be able to refer that client to. So that I think doulas working together in a team is a really awesome possibility for our field to grow in a really healthy way, and also in a way that, a seasoned doula can bring in somebody that might be new and be able to mentor them. It's really hard to shadow because it's such a personal thing. And, we get to know our clients, and I mean, I almost anytime would feel super uncomfortable saying, would you mind if I bring this new person in? It just doesn't feel right. So shadowing just hasn't really ever worked for me. I mean, maybe it does for other people, but I just don't really do that. But I will mentor a new doula from time to time in our area. And I think that's really great when we can raise up, the new people so that everyone can be trained across the board, so we can all, offer similar services to our clients.
I can see where the shadowing might be challenging. You'd have to get the client's permission to begin with, but that's really an intimate relationship. And those conversations are very personal, very vulnerable. And I could see where, if you're asking, hey, you may not know this person, but can they sit in and listen to your deepest, darkest secrets and conversations about dying? Yeah, I can see where that might be an issue.
Yeah, the only time I've really seen that work is if I bring in another doula right from the start. Sometimes there's a family, and sometimes you think you might be, there for the client, but then you come to realize early on that there's some family dynamics at play, or maybe there's some legacy projects that include children or what have you. And that's when I'll say, is it okay to have two of us? And if the two of us start working together early on, so we establish the relationship together, then that has good possibilities for working. And sometimes a new doula will call me and say, will you work with me with this client? And I'll start right early with them. And that way I understand the dynamics going on in their situation. And I don't have to be hands-on, but I can at least be the second person to rely on, either if they're not available or if something comes up that's new that they've never dealt with before. So I think that's a good way to get started too. If a new doula brings a client to an existing doula asking for support.
Yeah, that's almost like the existing doula is the shadow, the guide.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see where that would work. I love the idea of the network where you've got that team of 4 doulas and you have some others that you can reach out to and say, if advanced care planning is what the client needs, then we're going to get so-and-so to do it because that's her skill set. I mean, we do that in nursing all the time. Gabby will tell you, if you've got a nurse that's the experience with wounds, or somebody who's really experienced with trachs or colostomies, you got a patient that comes up with that particular circumstance, that's who you put on that case, right? You assign the person who's got the most skill.
One of the things, I don't like paperwork, so I will not do advance directives. So I make that very clear. But like Diane said, I like having someone that I can refer my clients to be able to do that. I tend to do the vigiling and the sitting with them, but also the end-of-life planning. I like to get them before diagnosis if possible to help people just make plans just in general. But if there is a diagnosis involved, I like to start from that very beginning to do it like Diane mentioned, which is the legacy review or life review, and to really help choreograph their end of life and see them through to the end, to that last breath, and then to their grief journey. That's one of the beautiful things about being a doula, is that we have the luxury of time, and we're not set up for these hour slots like you are in hospice.
Right.
I can see them at 2 a.m. or 2 in the afternoon. I can sit at their bedside for hours and hours, and I don't have to close the door after that last breath. I can help them along their grief journey, not pretending or assuming that I'm a therapist or a social worker or a counselor. I am not. But to be able to walk alongside them during that time, it's closure for me, but it's also a really beautiful, safe place for the person who is grieving, knowing that they can have that same person along that whole journey. And that's what we can do as doulas.
I think the consistency of your companion is very important. And that is one of the gaps that hospice has, because a lot of times once the death has occurred, then that family or that caregiving unit, caregivers, I don't want to label them as a unit, it's so objectifying, but those caregivers that are left behind are turned over to a bereavement coordinator, more than likely somebody they've never met. Maybe somebody who's not even on that team, they're working remotely. This conversation is so good, but we're going to take a quick break. Hang on for more great content.
In a world where compassion and community are needed more than ever, the International Doula Life Movement presents the Tree of Life Conference. Join IDLM November 1st through the 4th in San Antonio, Texas for an extraordinary experience in end-of-life care. The Tree of Life Conference is not just an event, it's a movement towards making a positive impact. Attendees will hear from expert speakers, including award-winning end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes, Lisa Paul of the Death Deck, Brenda Kazire and Nancy Hireman of Odonata Care, and end-of-life advocate Helen Bauer, host of the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Tree of Life Conference is more than just workshops and seminars. It's an opportunity to connect, learn, and renew your commitment to compassionate care. This event is made possible by the team at International Doula Life Movement, who believes in the power of empathy, education, and making a difference in the world. Don't miss out on this transformative experience. Join IDLM at the Tree of Life Conference in San Antonio, Texas from November 1st through the 4th. Visit internationaldoulalifemovement.com for more details and secure your spot today. When you need information about hospice for yourself or someone you care about, Hospice Navigation Services can help you navigate hospice care for the best end-of-life experience possible. If you're walking this journey and need the help of an experienced guide, Hospice Navigation Services is here for you. We understand the importance of having a guide who can provide personalized, unbiased support. Our team of experienced hospice navigators is here to offer one-on-one consulting sessions by phone or video. Whether you need information about how to start hospice services or guidance for your current services, we're here to listen and provide compassionate support every step of the way. You can book a 30-minute free navigation session with an experienced hospice navigator when you need general information to start your hospice experience. Book a 60-minute hospice navigation session when you have in-depth questions about hospice or need to troubleshoot your current hospice care. You deserve compassionate support and guidance for your end-of-life care. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Visit theheartofhospice.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
Angela, what would you say is your favorite part of the doula work? So Gabby doesn't like paperwork, and I'm pretty sure that the hospice nursing did that to you. As a nurse, you're scarred because let's face it, we do way too much documentation. But Angela, what would you say is your favorite part, and what's your skill?
Oh gosh, favorite part. I really like doing the life review. I really like helping people look at their past, and then not only that, but that legacy project. How do they want to be remembered? Whether it's providing letters for family or helping them put their items together and leaving special notes for those behind, or photo albums or recipe books. I really like being part of that process. I think it's so important. I think so many times at the end of life, people are worried that they're going to be a burden to somebody. They're worried they didn't make an impact. They're worried that no one's going to remember them, and to give them the comfort that not only will they be remembered, they'll be remembered in the way they wanted to. So helping them identify that and then creating that legacy they leave behind is something that I really enjoy doing. And unlike Gabby, I love doing advanced care plans. I really noticed that during COVID, I was approached a lot by people who were young, healthy, who didn't have any kind of diagnosis. But for the first time, death and mortality was in their face, and they were losing people unexpectedly. And maybe for the first time, they were going through what that was like and didn't want to be unprepared and not planned. So during COVID, I had a lot of business where I was helping young families, young singles help put together what their plans would be, and just kind of opening that space to talk about death, because at that time it was maybe more in their face. It was more as in the public than it had been before.
Yeah, we definitely had an increased awareness. Angela, do you think that that's slacked off since we've gotten through the pandemic and we're on the other side of things?
I am seeing less of that coming to me now. I do see, again, kind of going back to it's those who are newly diagnosed and their families who are looking for that help. But I really wish we could get back to keeping death front and center and making it less taboo to talk about it and easier to plan for your end of life. I think you live with more comfort, more security, more gratitude when you're living with the end in mind and how you want that last day to look well before you get there.
Yeah. If we could do that without the pandemic part.
Without the pandemic part, that would be
awesome.
ideal.
That would be awesome. So I want to ask you sort of a serious question, and I want you to reflect on it. The three of you are making such a difference when it comes to the lives of our patients, our seriously ill patients, their caregivers, and in the lives of these doulas too, acting as leaders and mentors for them. But how has working with the dying as a doula changed your lives? Diane, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. Well, it's changed my life in so many ways that are all really healthy and positive. I think when you asked that first question at the beginning of this podcast to describe our work in 2 words, and I said curiosity and meaning making, that really speaks to the changes that I've had in my own life because of working with the dying. It's first of all coming to the acceptance that we're all going to die and kind of normalizing the conversations about death and dying in my own life and with my own friends. That's been really helpful. But for me personally, I just live differently. I live with pretty much a clean slate as much as I can. If I need to say I'm sorry, when it's time to say thank you, I really say I love you to everybody who I love. And I love you guys, by the way. And, like it really means a lot to me to express how I feel and not carry around so much unfinished business and just this extra stuff, because I really think that having peace at the end of life as much as you can, I think having peace is really, like, for me, the heart of the goal of the doula. So when we work with our clients to work through their own unfinished business and to, reach out and make those phone calls for people they haven't spoken to for 20 years or something like that, it really tugs at my heart, and it makes me look at today and look at what matters most and who matters most and what's most important in my life, so that I can always feel like, kind of like I'm ready to die, to be honest. It's just like I'm good, and I want to stay that way.
That's beautiful. It's helped you to live like you're dying. And of course we all are.
Yeah.
Right? It's
true.
just a matter of the time. So Gabby, how about you? How has working as a doula changed your life?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Diane said. I don't wait for the bedside to say the things. I try to live life fully. But lately I've noticed something has changed, in that I see death as such a sacred act, such a moment that is like bigger than anything else we'll ever do. And I'm finding now, when I witness that last breath, and keep in mind, I've almost seen 2,000 last breaths. So that's a lot of last breaths. And over time, since I started doing this work, my first lessons were that of living life fuller and how fragile and precious life is and all of those things, right? It's actually made me a better human being. But just the other day, I witnessed a death, and I remember sitting there for a moment and thinking, this is big. This is so big. And I say these things a lot, like, this isn't about you, and this is a sacred moment. And these are things that I truly believe. But I remember sitting there with him when he died and thinking, I just witnessed that. Like, that's huge. And when his family walked in, because they don't live near, and I waited for them to come, they walked in and I saw the look on their face, and I saw them experience the realization that someone had just died, someone that they love. And while I'm reminded about how fragile and precious life is, I'm also really aware of what death does to us on so many different levels, and that it's big, and that we need to treat it with more respect and less casually. And I don't want to be the kind of doula or nurse or any member of the end of life care team that doesn't hold how sacred death is. I don't want to lose that. I don't want it to be casual. And if, as a doula, I could pass anything on to future doulas, it is reminding them how important it is to be fully present and to truly savor those last breaths, and to pause and to not rush anything. What I do now, and I've been doing this over the years, but more so now, is when I notice that last breath has been taken, I don't get up and say, okay, this has happened, or he's passed now, or any of those words. What I do is I sit and I wait until the family has realized it. I let this be their awareness and let them look. And then they'll turn around and they'll look at me as like, did he die? And I'll look and I'll nod gently and I'll say yes, because it's not about me. We are facilitators, we are partners, we are companions along a difficult journey, but it's not our journey. And the best thing that we can pass on to other people who do this work is to be very mindful of how truly sacred that last breath and death itself is to anyone, but especially to those who are preparing to say goodbye.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful to recognize the sacred time that we sit in, that we get to witness. That's pretty amazing. Angela, how about you? How has working as a doula changed your life?
I can echo some of the same things. I definitely think you live more presently when you're around death all the time. For me personally, I think it's, I used to have a huge fear of death. I was very scared of dying. I would have panic attacks about it. Just very, very fearful of death. And being around it, I've learned to be comfortable with it, to respect it, to not fear it. I haven't become numb to it or unaffected. That's not to say it, but I can live with it, and I can hold it, and I can hold it for others. And that's not something I ever thought I would end in. I never thought I would be able to land there myself, and then to be able to sit with it, to see it as a sacred transition, to see the beauty in it, the healing in it, the grace that can happen. I have a much healthier, more beautiful, loving relationship with death. It's no longer something I fear. And I like to be able to share that comfort with others at their last breaths and the last breaths of their friends and their family too, that this is part of that journey. It's not to be feared.
It goes to show you that we get way more from the people that we serve, because it is service. We call it companioning, providing a presence, sitting vigil, all of those things. But it is a service, and we're privileged to be able to do it. Yeah. If it doesn't change us a little bit, we're probably not doing it well or deeply enough, is the way I think about it. So let's lighten this a little bit. We dove down deep in there. So let's talk about the book. The book is awesome. You've basically taken all this knowledge and experience that the three of you have, and you've put this together as a guide and a toolkit. Is there any topic that you think now that you wish you could have included in the book, or you should have included in the book? Diane, what do you think? Was there anything that you left out of the book that you wish you'd put in?
Well, it's pretty new. It just came out in December. So really, I feel like we started at such sort of a minimalist place, and we kept building and building. So there were probably 20 or 30 things that we added, like, oh, let's not leave this out. Let's not leave that out. And we kept building and building and building. So that question we asked ourselves every single week that we were spent writing this book. What are we leaving out? Let's not leave out anything. So I don't think that there's anything serious that we left out. We could have gone into, burial options and, more after death type of things, but we really didn't want to. And we could have talked more about doing advanced care planning, but that's a lot of people kind of use their own state guidelines for that, and didn't really feel that it was that necessary. But other than those two things, I really feel like we hit so many important points, to the point that we even put our doula tips, like when we put our personal stories in there, and we really created this shell of everything that we thought we would want when we were new doulas. What was missing for us when we finished a class and went out there and went, oh, great, now what? What are we going to do? And we had to sit and write all these forms and things by ourselves. So we really did think that through. So I don't know, do you guys have anything to add to that, of what we might have added that we didn't?
I kind of agree with what you said. I think we wrote this book because there was so much unavailable to doulas who are doing this work. So we kept thinking, what do we wish we had more of? What do we wish we had access to? What did we want to know? What meant most to us doing this work? And we collaborated together and put it all in that book. So I think that there are other directions we could have gone into, maybe making it a second book if we chose to do that. But I think this book has everything a doula needs, whether they are seasoned or just starting out.
Angela, which one of the doula tips is your favorite?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think it might have been Diane. It's so hard to tell who wrote what because we kind of realized we had similar voices and our similar writing styles. So even reading it sometimes, I'm like, which one of us actually started that? And we all tweaked it so much. But I think of respecting and honoring people's time, not being late to things. I think how we worded it in the book was when you have less time of it, it's even more precious. And to be cognizant of that, to not waste their time, to show up, to honor that, and not only be present but be timely. And I think that's a very important. It sounds simple and it sounds basic, but it's so impactful.
Yeah, I agree. Diane, what's your favorite tip?
Well, that tip was actually Gabby's, and that's really important to me too. And I try to minimize my appointment so that I don't go taking 2 hours out of somebody's day when I can be efficient and do it in 45 minutes. I think that's really important. One of my favorite tips, I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was about kind of giving yourself some kind of separation when you go to somebody's house to like let go of your own stuff. Like make sure that before you knock on somebody's door that you're 100% present for the people. You never know what's waiting for you on the other side of that door, but it's really important that you prepare yourself for whatever's going to greet you there by letting go of your own needs and your own cares and your own worries, your own troubles, and just kind of go in, take a couple deep breaths, and just be very, very present for the people. Never knowing, sometimes if you're not present, you walk in the door thinking you're there for your one client when really there's somebody in the back corner who's really having a hard time. And that's really why you were there that day. And I always feel like if you didn't take the time to kind of clear your mind and prepare yourself to step into somebody else's journey, that you might miss something.
That's a very good tip. That sounds like a ritual, which I happen to know is Gabby's favorite thing. Gabby, you included rituals in the book. What's your favorite ritual?
Actually, that's a really great question because we all actually added rituals in there. It is one of my favorite things to do, and it's something that I'm more known for in my doula work. I think, and now I'm going to have to look it up while I'm trying to talk to you about it, but there was a ritual, and it's not mine. It's Angela's, and it's the forgiveness ritual, which I do forgiveness rituals as well. And I'm not going to say anything about it because you have to look it up in the book. But I actually read this. You want me to tell you really quickly?
Yes.
Okay. So the intention, I'll just read the directions. The intention of this ritual is to foster forgiveness in ourselves and in others. Find a safe place of comfort and serenity to meditate on what forgiveness looks like to you. This is a chance to unburden your heart, mind, and soul. Be thoughtful, intentional, thorough, and specific in your writings. The cathartic process of writing is part of the healing purpose of this ritual. And this is Angela's. I like to have an amethyst crystal nearby for its soothing properties and to help encourage intuition and reflection. And it goes on to say how you use this. I have now asked to borrow that into my forgiveness workshop, which I have my own rituals, but it was so beautiful the way that she put it out there. And that same with the tips. We all put our stuff, right? Our experience and our thoughts and all of our things that work for us. And even though we each had our individual initial contribution, they all blended so much that, like Angela said, I don't know sometimes whose was whose, but I do know that ritual was Angela's because the minute I read it when she submitted it, I was like, this is beautiful. So I think I love the rituals I do. I still, they're still my go-to, but I have now added hers because it is so lovely. And it's a good reminder that the gifts that other people can bring, you're not less than because you're borrowing something from someone else. And the one thing that we really want to make clear as doulas is that we are a community. we are not solo acts in any way, and that we are better together. And this book is a really good example of that, because we collaborated, and at no time did I ever feel less of a contributor than either Diane or Angela. And I actually felt like my words sounded better when they were a little bit of sprinkle from both of them were added to it, because we are better together. And I think that's what this book shows.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, what encouragement and hope would you offer to a caregiver who's at the bedside right now? I'm going to make you guys do some doula work. You're not getting off easy on this. Somebody who's at the bedside right now caring for somebody they love, not a doula, but a family member. What encouragement would you offer them right now? Angela, what would you tell a caregiver?
To not be worried about doing the wrong thing, just by being present and showing up and sharing your heart, your love for that person. That's what matters the most. Don't worry about using the absolute perfect words or doing everything correctly right. You're doing it right by showing up. That anyone can be witness to death and companion our loved ones to that point, that they don't have to be professionals. I'd like them to feel empowered to know that they can do this. They can be there, and their hearts, their open mind, their presence, that's the tools that they need.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Diane, what about you? What encouragement would you offer to a caregiver?
Well, I loved everything that Angela just said. And, I think adding on, just acknowledging that it's hard work. It's very, very hard work, and it's emotional work. And, just encouraging them to realize that they're doing the best they can, and they're doing a wonderful job, and that there's really no right way to do this, but just to show up and remember to ask for help. I mean, I think that that's just one of the things that I see a lot of times. Caretakers get into a rhythm, and then they start feeling like they're the only ones that can do. And so they don't kind of reach out to their support system. And so I think that it's really important to just remind caregivers to reach out and ask for the support for them, like, so that other people can hold space for them while they're holding space for their loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. It's so easy to get tunnel vision. So you think I'm the only one, and when really there's a village out there if you reach out to them.
Exactly.
Gabby, how about you? What encouragement would you offer to a caregiver who's taking care of someone who's dying right now?
To not stop finding joy. I think people at the bedside punish themselves somehow. They don't do the things that they enjoy, the things that they've been doing all along, the taking walks or playing tennis or sleeping or getting their nails done or hanging out with their friends. They don't do it because they feel like they're abandoning their person. And I think that we need to let them know that it's okay to find joy in a difficult time. And maybe it won't be in the same way that you might have done before, but maybe it's simply about being surrounded by people that lift you up at a difficult time. That it's kind of exactly what both Angela and Diane said about, it's okay to ask for help. It's also okay to step away, to take a break. You're allowed to do that. And people feel such guilt and a sense of abandonment when they walk away from the bedside, to the point where they are caring for themselves poorly and they fall. Their bodies fail them, they're emotional, they're exhausted, and yet they cannot step away. And a lot happens when you do that. You become so almost emotional that you don't see things as clearly, and you don't give yourself to that person as much. There's things that we say all the time, like, they hear you, right? Say those things. I think people get so wrapped up in the exhaustion that they forget to say the things, or they forget to just be present. It's so much, it's so exhausting, and it's so emotional. I want you to give yourself permission to step away, take a break, take care of yourself. And when you are at that bedside, say the things, say all the things.
I have no doubt that this book is just a powerhouse of all this knowledge and experience and heart that you guys bring to the work. Tell me, Diane, who should buy the book? Who should read it?
Well, certainly new doulas, and already experienced doulas can also get a lot out of it. I think it really would bring a lot of consistency to the field if we were all operating under similar umbrellas, and just to be able to have a template to go for legacy project, life review, vigil plan, maid client, rituals, all the stuff is in there. So I don't think there's any doula that wouldn't get something out of our book. I'm hearing that a lot of hospice nurses are buying it and enjoying it. Caregivers are buying it and enjoying it. I've even heard of a couple palliative care doctors in our town who have been reading the book and enjoying it and getting a lot out of it, just in terms of being at the bedside of their clients, that they're not doulaing necessarily, but even just breaking out to those hard conversations that need to happen, and how to do that, So I think people in the medical field for sure, but I also think a lot for caregivers who are maybe sitting at the bedside with somebody for months and months, or maybe even longer, to be able to use our book to get some ideas for more intimate conversations and more like healing conversations that might need to take place. I think it's really good for caregivers as well.
So basically everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of great ideas in it for even people who want to have a nice, deep conversation in their own family, actually.
Nice. Angela, I'm going to let you round us up. Where can people find the book and connect with you guys?
The book is available at Amazon.com, and it can also be found by reaching out to any one of the three of us directly. My website is real easy, angelashook.com.
I'm going to have links in the show notes and include that so that anybody can connect with the three of you and find the book and purchase it. You guys are doing some amazing work. I feel like you're sort of this, maybe this isn't the best analogy, but the Bermuda Triangle. It's like this intersection of compassion. Bermuda Triangle is probably not the best way to describe it, but this intersection of compassion and skill and knowledge and experience, and really just caring hearts about what you do. Thank you so much for what you're contributing into the end-of-life community, to the doula community, and the hospice community, because we are learning from you. So thank you so much for doing all this work and for sharing with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com, and don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram, and send your questions or comments by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.